Thank you so much, Johnny. And the next presentation is by Urs Huber. Urs is the founder of FSP Architects, and he has been in the construction industry since 1995. He has used BIM extensively on his projects and is a certified VDC practitioner. Welcome, Urs.
Thank you very much, Tulika. And hello also dear participants. As Tulika mentioned, my name is Urs Huber. I'm an architect and I've been working for many years as a project manager at FSP Architects in Spreitenbach, Switzerland. My presentation is also about VDC as a whole in planning, and my role in the following project was, or rather still is, the overall management during the design phase of the project. We are located in a typical small town in the Swiss Midland, and the project is to redesign and convert office workstations on floors 2 through 5 of this high-rise building. The definition of high-rise came from the Swiss fire regulations. Building taller than 30 meters is called high-rise. The conversion covers about 8,400 square meters, costs about 20 million Swiss francs, and affects approximately 550 workplaces. The conversion will be carried out in 2 phases. First on floor 4 to 5 until mid-21. It's already done. Then on floor 2 and 3 until next year in May. The other areas are and will remain in operation. There are still additional topics to mention. First, it is a listed building from 1952. And as I mentioned, it is a high-rise building and therefore peppered with the necessary fire protection retrofits. Then the architecture must be usable for handicapped people, and also a production area of about 10,000 square meters behind this main building must keep in operation without breaks. And one small additional point to note, the start of planning was pretty much at the time when the first pandemic reports from China has been arriving in Switzerland around the turn of 1920. Here, in between, as a reminder, VDC framework, please note the icon in the upper right corner. There you can see where we are in the VDC framework, and you're able to check which VDC elements we are using. I like to start with the client objectives. They have already been worked out in advance by the investor and the user of the building. In addition to, for example, the economic efficiency, a flexible floor plan, or an improvement in internal cooperation and collaboration, or even demands on representation and productivity. Each of these objectives with corresponding target values. Here, I would like to focus on point 4 and 5. You can see them highlighted with the colored background. In the case of point 4, we were able to check the targets early in the design phase by conducting employee surveys, whether we could achieve the target. And point 5 could also be determined early on with the development of the furniture layouts and the finding of a space balance between meeting rooms, access areas, and workplaces. Other objectives can only be determined, as Martin mentioned in his speech, later during the operational phase by the client and the user. I would like to explain points 4 and 5 a little more detailed. You can see the graphic on the left, point 4, which topics were requested in the survey. Workplaces, access to workplace, hygiene, room climate, and so on. The first survey was based on the stock, the existing layout, and the existing room offer. Here, the blue line. Then the second survey, the amber line, were made during the first design phase. And the yellow line, the third survey, when the design process was completed. Finally, the green line shows us the final result. And you can see, and of course, I'm glad to show this success between the blue line, of course, and the green line. Please note one small detail, the item hygiene, third from the left. Here, exactly between the second and the third survey, the value collapsed. This was a direct effect of a pandemic situation in early 2020, and there was a great uncertainty about the density of workplaces, ventilation systems, contagion, store handles, and so on, as far as hygiene is concerned. Therefore, I was curious about the result of the last green line, the last survey, which we have done after moving the month before. Very important that the results in the topics of room climate, room offer, private space, and socializing. Important because these are very crucial and have a big impact to the employee satisfaction. Point 4 I talk about. Point 5 on the right hand, also very important. Here you can see how is the development of workplace density during the project compared to the Swiss average, the red bar on the right side. This evaluation is necessary to prove the economic viability of the entire project. In this matrix, you have the overview of how I translated the client objectives into the project objectives. The upper listing of client objectives from the previous slide enabled me to define the necessary project objectives and working out appropriate controllable factors to support and reach the project objectives. Reflecting on which client objective I expect to be able to support with the defined project objective helped me to find out if I could map all the client objectives to the elaborated project objectives and if the controllable factors are useful to support these objectives. And finally, I wanted to map the appropriate VDC element I like to use to each objective. So this gave me a very good and simple overview of the whole project, and I can reflect myself continuously with this kind of metrics. Additional effect, I could easily explain the client objectives, project objectives, and also the controllable factors to the project participants with one single matrix. As can be seen in the upper list of client objectives, I have again highlighted two client objectives. Point 4, increase the employee satisfaction, and point 5, increase the workplace density per square meter. Then below in the table of project objectives, you can see which point supports the two client objectives I mentioned. This means that I already have 4 project objectives with corresponding controllable factors to achieve employee satisfaction and increase workplace density in order to achieve the client objectives. And further, it's evident with which VDC element this can be implemented. Finally, I would like to mention my very personal project objective, point 99. Without a reference to a client objective, I want to generate a 15% profit for my company. That's about 100,000 Swiss francs, but more about this point later. The eye sessions with metrics. First, if you have a smartphone by your hand, I ask you to scan the QR code and follow the suggested link during my explanations. Okay, have a look to picture 1. The use of eyes was excellent in this project to pick up the user's requirements. So put you back just in mind to 2020 in the months of January to March and the events at that time. It could be that we all haven't already quite present what seemed not or not yet possible at that time regarding meetings, workshops, and the technical and virtual possibilities. The user here had already imposed restrictions on the number of people before the Swiss authorities issued the decrees. So we had to hold the eyes physically but divided into very small groups. Because of these restrictions, we decide to conduct alternating eye sessions with 2 project managers from the client side and 2 people from the planning side. Subsequently, the user met with her subgroups to conduct further eye sessions. On the one hand, we provided the user with presentations, as shown in figure 2, and detailed planning documents. More important, however, were the visualizations that could be called up via QR code, and in addition, a whole digital building model with 1 completed level of the new office. We stored this model on a small computer, which we gave to the user in a suitcase, to be seen on picture 3, plus a game controller, mouse, and the HDMI cable. So the user could independently cruise through a virtual model, and he could experience materials, surfaces, room impressions of views, and even space conditions. For this, we use the computer programs ArchiCAD and Twinmotion. In addition, see on point 4, we equipped a room on site with the real products for materialization and coloration, which was accessible to all employees. With the short films of rooms, the whole digital model of the building, and the physical samples, we had a complete picture of the future working environment. I already talked about the topic and measurement of employee satisfaction, and I was able to show you the survey results and the success. But even without all the measurements, I quickly knew that the pleasure factor in the user sessions was incredibly high due to the game console and the digital model. The BIM models here, a holistic building scan of the existing building picture. 1, you can see, and its subsequent modeling of the geometry in ArchiCAD served as the model basis for the planning in the project. Old planning documents from the time of construction were included for this purpose. The building structure was not probed. I mean that no ceilings or floors were open to capture the construction, also called a sondage. We architects continue to work with this model, virtually breaking off elements, creating new elements, and making initial evaluations from the model, like lists from doors, walls, or lists with all the voids. The resulting model of the architecture was used by the MEP plannings as a reference model to design the line, ducts, pipes correctly. And in a software called LibreOffice, I then merged, checked, and coordinate the models of various disciplines. You can see on picture 2. And as already mentioned, the same model was the basis for the various visualizations that the users could view. The BIM and the metrics. As BIM and overall planning coordinator, I am responsible for model qualities and modeling progress. I measured these when I received the models so that I could quickly identify any irregular differences. You can see in figure 1. As already mentioned, I was able to make various evaluations from the coordination model. Popular, for example, is finding and counting the number of voids, picture 2. With different rules, partly created by myself, I checked the construction quality. For example, the ducts or pipes in relation to the pillars in lightweight construction walls. This allowed us to reduce, but not prevent, rework on the construction site. You can see on picture 3 below. When I recorded the reasons for the rework that was carried out, and here I am really surprised, so far the issues of missing or inaccurate recording and the lack of probing of the existing structure is in first place. Therefore, it's necessary to assume and evaluate the risk between making sondage and probing, as well as rework on site at the beginning of the design phase. In this project, we are now, watch the VDC element PPM. Figure 1 shows the customer's predetermined milestones. The green check marks indicate the milestones that were successfully achieved. Because the project is executed in 2 phases, we were able to incorporate findings from the first phase into the second phase. Therefore, a decision that was made too late in the first phase has now been moved forward in time in the second phase from November 21 to August 21. In figure 2, you can see that with the given milestones, we worked out the planning process together as a team. We defined the dependencies and we could detect the interactions as well as the critical path. We mostly used the VDC element I's during these sessions. Figure 3 shows that in addition to teamwork, I also cultivate individual work because following the I sessions in which we've been made process planning, I work out the classical schedule in MS project. Thereby, I can't reflect in peace whether the findings developed in the I sessions are plausible. Finally, point 4 as an example, in a short ICE, together with the planners, the detailed process for the model coordination was aligned. Since we have already worked together in the same team several times for the same client, certain topics are only reviewed and not worked out from the beginning. This client here, when the project is released, will not accept a schedule delay or a cost overrun. This is a fact and all involved planners are aware of it. We are a well-rehearsed team. We know the client and ourselves, and we know that the specific costs, all deadlines, and the quality have to be met. That's why I work here with a risk indicator for this team. Every 2 weeks, each planning participant, contractor, and client has to fill out a very small survey. The survey, the topics of costs, deadlines, quality, have to be evaluated. The agreement is when a critical voice appears, for example, an amber or even a red dot, I personally contact the person making the critical comment. In doing so, we discuss the concerns together and consider controllable factors. These are then discussed, initiated, and implemented in a team. The risk indicator is shown in figure 1 on the left. In figure 2, you can see section of a measurement of work delays. Here I measure the time it takes to process requests for information or the delay in processing tasks in relation to the agreed deadline. Here, a short explanation of Swiss specialty is needed in the international context. We Swiss have great difficulties in dealing with personal negative criticism. Therefore, the results of the measurement are regularly submitted to the participants without mentioning their names. And in that case of 2 measurements, you can see that after the results were announced, the red vertical line, the delays were reduced at the top company, and this without any further sanctions being taken.
Urs, you have 4 minutes left.
Thank you. For the sake of completeness here, the overview of the processed elements with crisp and dinding measurements. And so my experience in Switzerland shows that at the moment I can use the VDC elements more successfully if I don't make any announcements and explanation of VDC. This takes too much time and make too many uncertainties because the background of the VDC framework is still relatively unknown. But you know, we are working on it, of course. And the second point of my experience is that I allow myself to use VDC only in a very concentrated and focused way. I mean, not using VDC because you know it, use it because you need it. Sorry, I hope it's plausible. But now, the last 3 minutes, my personal goal, number 99. We use the B-File software in our office. We use it to plan the workload and of our employees. In this tool, with the right inputs, we get automatic forecasts. These form the basis for developing and defining controllable factors for any necessary corrections. My personal learning from past projects, which can be indicators of success, are the following 5 points you see on the sheet mentioned under factor for achieving the objectives. First, use a few internal and external participants as possible. Second, use VDC elements focused. If it's necessary, just one single VDC element like tracking, metrics I mean, ICE, BIM, or a process planning means, of course, PPM. Third point, combine disciplines in a project. Here we have one firm, one contact person for architecture, overall management, fire protection planning, and BIM coordination. One firm and contact person for the whole MEP planning and the coordination, including building automating, and one firm contact person for construction management, including terms, codes, quality, security on site. The specialists are under the overall management, for example, building physics, civil engineer, and others. 4, use a well-rehearsed team and make only necessary performance. Just do what you need. It's not easy sometimes with the contract system in Switzerland. Point 5, communicate and work together quickly if there are some emerging difficulties. And as I mentioned, I would like to achieve a profit of 100,000 Swiss francs or 15% of the architect's fee. And as you can see on the right today, really today, I'm at 170,000 Swiss francs with my forecast, which already means 25% of the architect's fee. So time is running. Now, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And I wish you successful inputs for your daily work in the further course of the conference. And I like to call back to the studio.
Thank you, Urs. In the interest of time, I request that if you have any questions for Urs, please type them in the Q&A window, and Urs can answer them there. That's okay.
Thank